You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Hard Foul. I'm Jim Quigley with my brother Mike, as always. And hey, this is going to be a short version of the podcast. A quick recap of last night's, what ended up being a blowout, but a pretty entertaining game against the Sacramento Kings in Sacramento. And Mike, we were on the pod yesterday, and we kind of previewed this game a little bit, and we kind of nailed it in a lot of different ways. We talked about how they're going to respond, that, particularly this should be an upset team after the way they lost in Golden State, and they should come out with some, with higher energy. And despite it being on the back-to-back and despite it being without Tatum, they're still a more talented team. And with the right approach, this is a game they should win. We talked about the struggle with talented guards, and you had mentioned how the performance against Halliburton and what Curry did to them. And sure enough, DeAndre Fox in the first half, he certainly slowed down. In the second half was, kind of dictated the offense for Sacramento and did whatever he really wanted to do. And then we talked about defending the three and shooting the three. And there was certainly still issues with defending the three against a Sacramento team that loves to shoot the three and can shoot it well in that first half. But the difference, I think, in this game is that the Celtics in the second half got out and covered it a lot better. They kept their energy level and effort and attention to detail high at all times. And they shot the three well. And unlike Sacramento, when they needed to score inside, they were able to get Porzingas the ball wherever he wanted. And whether it was 2 or 3 or just Sabonis on him, he was kind of able to score at will. And whenever Sacramento tried to go to the hoop, it was Porzingas meeting them there, and they just weren't able to do anything in that regard. The other thing we hit on, we talked about, the Celtics losing the last 4 road games, the differences between home and the road. And we did talk about that Porzingas wasn't there for those last 4 games, and you saw the impact he made. Mike, my last, just kind of point, and we could talk into this, all these issues more in depth, just an incredibly entertaining game. Jaylen Brown was awesome. And once again, Derek White, and you talked about him playing off of Tatum and Brown the other night in Golden State. I thought last night he facilitated a lot of that offense and a lot of his scoring on his own, found his own shot. And once again, he had, 4 blocks on defense. He's a force. And, there's been talk, and it sounded foul-fetched a couple of weeks ago about him potentially being an all-star. But he's making a statement for it right now. And it just, we're getting to the point here in the end of December where that him being left off that top 100 just grows more absurd. The top 100 plays by ESPN, more absurd by the day. So that's kind of my opening take on the game and what I thought was an important win.
Yeah, Derek White and Jaylen Brown really set the tone offensively right from the start after Sacramento got off to a really hot start. I think they were up double digits really early on.
Sure.
Azula called the timeout. It wasn't looking great for like the first 4 minutes of the game as far as how this was going to go, especially with the way De'Aaron Fox was hitting the three, which was just insane with guys in his face. The Celtics responded with 3-point shooting as well, and that came from White. And a lot of White's looks started off of Brown's drives to the basket. And Brown, being a playmaker, is really impacting this team in a positive way where he's not turning the ball over. He's strong with his handle. He's making really good decisions. And then with Tatum out, White just as a scorer, going to the basket, pulling up from 3, whatever it might be. His 3-point shooting has been really remarkable on this road trip and really good all season. And as far as him being an all-star, yeah, he's playing like an all-star. In the East, it'll be really hard to make the all-star team with the guards we have out here. I mean, even what's his name in Atlanta? Why can't I think of his
Pretty
name?
young.
Trae Young in Atlanta.
Yeah.
He's broken the record for the most games in a row with 30 points and 10 assists this season. But White's been arguably the second or third best player on the Celtics, and we're talking about Porzingas, Tatum, and Brown. They're just an offensive force, and Sacramento just didn't have the size to even match up with Porzingas, who's shooting over the top of everybody. And Sacramento played well. They played really well, especially offensively. They just didn't have enough talent.
Yeah, just
There's not enough talent to stay with Boston. And how are you going to beat Boston when you have Pritchard coming off the bench, hitting 6 threes, going 6 of 11 from the floor? What did he score overall for the game? 20-something? 28?
Yeah, he was in the 20s. They had a few guys. I know Holiday was in the 20s, and White and Brown, I think, each had like 28 or 25, and Porzingas was right there as well. Yeah, no, it's just – and Porzingas on both ends. Like, Sacramento, all they were really able to do was shoot threes. When they tried to go inside, they had real issues. There were a couple possessions in a row where, Sabonis just threw his shoulder into Porzingas' chest and was able to get something going. For the most part, Sabonis was made a non-factor by Porzingas, a complete non-factor. Where, the Celtics have kind of struggled with him in the past, but they haven't struggled with this Kings team. I think they're comfortable playing them. I think they know offensively they can get whatever they want. They're not a very good defensive team at all. Obviously highly skilled. Sacramento's a tough place to play. But outside of a game in Sacramento a few years back when Fox went crazy against the Celtics, these games haven't really been close. And once again, the Celtics were, for the first time this year, they were without Tatum, and they responded really well. And they just have a bunch of good players. And even coming off the bench, you saw Hauser kind of get going with the 3-ball again, obviously Pritchard, and you had positive contributions from Steve and Brissett. They've shown their depth, and they're showing, just the high level of talent, even when a guy or two are down. And they had 2 guys down last night with Horford and Tatum. It was a big win. I think they needed to show something on the road. Scal kind of mentioned the bus ride. He talked a bit about, the bus ride after the Golden State game to Sacramento and how you couldn't hear a word. I really take that as a good thing, that this team was pissed off. They should have been with the way that game ended. And you thought that they would be. We hinted at that on the pod and talked about it on the pod from yesterday, that these guys should be ready to go based off of what happened in Golden State. And, to be able to, have a win like this going into LA against, the Clippers that are red hot and the Lakers who are kind of struggling since they won that tournament.
Yeah, the Clippers have won 8 in a row, Jim. You were wrong.
I was wrong. Yeah, that was the Suns that what's his name? Brunson went off against. I was wrong.
And if I can make a comment just about I think another big factor that has been helping the Celtics with this, I think they're like 9-2 in their last 11 with these wins, is when they're struggling offensively or they're slow offensively, Peyton Pritchard's early offense, especially hitting threes off the bench, has been really sparking a lot. Now, they were already in rhythm when Pritchard came in against Sacramento, but he's coming in, his first shot's a deep 3 and he's drilling it. This is becoming kind of common for him.
Yeah.
And he shot him out of slumps in the first quarter against Cleveland during the home stretch. Actually did that twice against Cleveland.
Yeah,
and he did it against Orlando too, where the Celtics were like 1 for 9 from 3, and he came in and he hit 2, and then the Celtics ended the game 19 for 43. It's really encouraging to see the offense he's bringing, especially with the struggles he had at the start of the season. And when Hauser hit his slump, which it looks like he'd ended against Sacramento, Pritchard was picking it up with his shooting. So that's a ton of shooting the Celtics have off the bench. And we're getting to that time of year, Jim. We're in the trade deadline time, and I don't know specifically how the Celtics do anything, because I wouldn't want to move any of these core players off the bench. I wouldn't want to match their salaries for anybody with the way they fit. The only move I'd be willing to make is maybe using the TPE from Grant and a second round pick or something to bring another maybe big in. It'd be nice to have another big body. But it'd have to be a guy who's willing to know they're not going to play in the playoffs. They're in a really good position. Like, you're going to see other teams really moving stuff around to try to compete with the Celtics. And I think the Celtics roster, if healthy, we're just seeing a really, really hard team to stay with offensively. Their challenge for the Celtics, and their defense was good in the second half against Sacramento, but the challenge for the Celtics is their defensive intensity being consistent on the road. That's their area to improve right now, I think.
And it was better in the second half. Sacramento still made some threes in that third quarter, especially down the stretch of that third, keep it within 20. I think it might have got up to almost 30 at one point in that third quarter. That's how dominant the Celtics were. It kind of happened when, when the reserves came in for Sacramento and just provided some energy, I guess, off the bench when things really weren't going well. I mean, Mike Brown, not Mike Brown. What's the name of the Sacramento coach? But he used
Mike Brown.
Mike Brown, that's right. Mike Brown. He used all his timeouts by the 9-minute mark in the fourth quarter, so you could get a sense of how that game went for them and what they just had no answers. And the Porzingas X factor is just a huge difference on how this team operates. And it really kind of changes the approach at the trade deadline, as you mentioned. I feel like the Celtics have all their main pieces. They tried to grab another main piece a couple of deadlines ago with Derek White, then this offseason bringing in Porzingas and Holiday. So whatever they bring in now is a luxury, whether it's a scoring guard off the bench or if it's a big, like you said. I saw Isaiah Stewart's name kind of thrown around, but he makes $15 million. I'm not sure how you make that work.
You'd have to give up a core player. I'm not replacing that guy. Any of our core players.
That's right. And I've seen Shams say that the Celtics are going to be aggressive. I just don't know who. Now, Brad has been aggressive, obviously, the offseason and trade deadlines. I just don't know who's going to be available and with salaries, how you make that work. If there's a will, there's a way, I guess. And I guess, depends on the level of player that you bring in. I think it's probably more likely that we see the Celtics make a move on the buyout market if and when that happens to bring in a big.
Yeah.
Usually those are guys that understand the role they're coming into, and maybe you find an extra big body there.
Well, honestly, Jim, that's what I think.
That's what I'm kind of thinking. Maybe a guy like Andre Drummond or something is available at that point.
That's what I was just going to say. It's like a second-round pick for Drummond, and Drummond is filling a void in the regular season when guys are hurt.
Yeah.
The other thing that the Celtics could do, and this guy may be earning this right now, is the backup center on our team, and I can't pronounce his name. Queta?
Neemias Queta. Neemias Queta. The pride of Portugal. Everyone in South Coast Massachusetts love him. New Bedford, they're huge fans of the pride of Portugal.
So Neemias Queta, I think, is playing himself into the argument that I deserve a standard contract, not a two-way. And that may be where the Celtics that might be the big move for the Celtics. They really haven't missed a beat without Cornette because this kid's playing. So,
and that's not a decision they have to make till January. So there's no rush. Yeah. Or maybe if it's they can make him a two-way at any point. I think some of their non-guaranteed.
Well, he is a two-way.
I mean, they can make him a guaranteed contract and sign him into next year at any point this year. I think some of the non-guaranteed guys become guaranteed after a certain, like January 15th or something. So that if you want to create a roster spot, that's probably how you do it. But yeah, no, he's earning it. He was great against Golden State. He was okay last night. He had some moments where you could see that young player kind of shine through. And as we go against better teams and deeper into the season, you'll see some exposure. But he looks like an NBA player. There's no doubt about that.
Well, okay, Jim, we get 2 games coming up that are really big Saturday night in LA against the Clippers. That'll be a big test for the Celtics, especially if Tatum's out again.
Yeah.
I expect to see the Clippers continuing to play a high level of basketball. So we'll see if the Celtics are able to respond to that on the road. That's going to be a really tough game. I think that's probably the toughest game on this road trip. Obviously, great matchups, thinking about Kawhi Leonard covering Jason Tatum and Paul George covering Tatum and Brown. I don't think the Clippers match up size-wise with Porzingas right now. I think they got guys down, so we're looking at probably Daniel Tice. I think he's playing a lot there now, isn't he?
Yeah, and this is why you brought in Porzingas for matchups like this, to deter guys from going to the basket on one end and make them a jump shooting team, and then the ability to, get them the ball in the high post, just turn around and shoot with no one there that really can defend them. And if you can get them on switches on any of those guys, even as good a defender as Kawhi, Porzingas can just shoot over him. And
it'll be a real good test for
matchup, but this is why you brought Porzingas in.
Yeah, it'll be a real good test for the Celtics. The Clippers play a really physical brand of basketball with a slow pace on offense and defense. So it's going to challenge the Celtics' mental toughness, where they're not probably going to get calls on the road. Clippers are probably going to get away with playing physical against Tatum and Brown. And outside of expecting Porzingas to have a big game, I do see this as another opportunity for Derek White and Holiday to have big games. And I think that's ultimately would make the Celtics the favorite. But again, it'll be a big test. And then obviously Christmas Day, that'll be fun, right? LeBron James, LA, Anthony Davis, let's go.
And that's a team that's not playing well right now. They've really struggled since the season tournament. And I think they're the only team that hasn't even covered the spread since the in-season tournament. So no matter, so this
they've given up the most threes, and they've missed the most. They've made the least threes and given up the most threes since the in-season tournament. The Lakers' 3-point defense has been atrocious, and their offense, they're just ice cold.
Yeah, and it's not that surprising. In some sense, where LeBron's an older player, went all out, you got to figure some fatigue sets in. And Anthony Davis, unless there's a carrot out there in front of him, and even when there's a carrot, sometimes you don't know when or if he's going to show up. Any little injury, he's not playing. Great player, but soft. Just incredibly soft. Yeah.
Well, all right, listeners, we'll catch up after Christmas. Have a happy holiday season with Christmas and Hanukkah and all the other holidays we celebrate here. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yep. Take care, everybody.